Good morning, listeners. You're welcome to this week's Ag Report. I'm Jim Finn. Later on in the programme, I will be discussing property prices, both land and houses and sites, with the REA auctioneers here in County Tipperary. My first guest this morning, listeners, is Michael Campion from Teagasc. Good morning, Michael, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Jim. Happy to be on there this
Oh,
morning.
okay. Michael, we're going to be discussing the making of high quality silage. So, where do we start?
Yeah, Jim, I suppose, look, grass silage, it costs approximately 2 to 2.5 times what grass will cost per tonne of dry matter. So most of the additional cost in this is incurred through the harvesting, the fertiliser, I suppose fixed charges plus feed out costs then over the winter period. For farmers, the capacity to maximise dry matter yield per cut, then it's affected are limited by stage of growth and grass quality. Then, so I suppose, look, it's a fine balance between a bulky crop and a quality crop. So, in some cases, farmers may aim to delay harvest to bulk up crops, and that will increase the dry matter yield of that individual crop. However, digestibility can decline sharply after grass is headed out. So, the total yield, I suppose, the second cut crop off that field and the total yield across the year may be down as a result. So farmers bulking up crops, it's not always necessarily the right thing to do.
Basically, then, what is the right thing to do?
I suppose, look, we're targeting a fine balance there between quality and quantity there. So, look, depending on farming systems, be it beef or dairy, we need different quality silages on farms. So, just I suppose on the beef side, look over a number of studies at the Teagasc Research Centre in Grange, leafy silage with a high dry matter intake, so high DMD silage, resulted in higher and better feed intakes, which again translated to better live weight gains for finishing cattle. I suppose these came from shorter days to finish, lower total silage dry matter required then as a result of that. So less days on farm, less silage needed. And then with the better quality silage, there was lower daily concentrate intakes to achieve the same target daily gains. And then lower fixed costs as well. So the slurry, the labour side, some overheads, and that would be a bit lower per animal
Mm-hmm.
if they're there on farm a significant number of days less. And these benefits can be seen then as well with younger stock. So your weanling cattle as well, the better quality silage, the better gains, lower meal for the same level of gain over the winter.
Looking then at the differences, what difference does it make if we cut silage in May or June? You know, if we cut silage early in May, which doesn't look likely at the moment, and if we have to go into June, what's the difference with the cutting dates as far as quality is concerned?
Yeah, so look, we've had a mixed period of weather so far this year, and silage may be late in some cases, but in other cases, maybe some ground might be grazed, and that silage might still come in at the same time. So, I suppose late May time as usual, but I suppose the farmer may not be able to get some of that ground grazed. Look, in terms of yield, if we were to look at 2 dates, I suppose the 20th of May versus maybe the 1st of June, so there's a 10-day difference there. um, Look, silage yields 20th of May, you'd be looking at 4.5, 5 ton, depending on, I suppose, the quality of the grass sward, versus maybe getting that closer to 6 ton come the 1st of June in around that date. Um, I suppose from an intake point of view, then the heavier cut being the 1st of June cut, the intakes will be significantly down on that. So you'll be down to possibly 8 kg intake there for I suppose your older cattle, or yeah, your older cattle, say a 500 kilo animal on that type of silage, versus maybe 9.5 kg intake on the earlier cut silage. Look, the earlier cut silage, there'd be more leafy grass within that silage sward, or leafy, there'd be a leafier silage, you'd get higher intakes, there'd be less fibre content, and then in turn you'd have higher live weight gains off that better quality silage cut. We'll call it 20th of May versus the first of June or that.
I see. Now, farmers are, I suppose, currently thinking about planning your grass silage strategy, their strategy. So, what is a good strategy to get to be planning for at the moment?
Look, I suppose you want good yield within the first cut,
Mm.
and then a clean, well preserved feed with good palatability. I suppose some grass silage swards stocks can become an issue within them, so farmers need to, I suppose, walk them fields early to mid-April just to see are docks becoming an issue in some of them swards. So swards that are getting possibly 2 and maybe 3 cuts yearly off them, docks can become an issue. I suppose the main objective is high dry matter yield, good preservation. Look, they remain consistent across farming systems. I suppose in terms of the optimum DMD or optimum silage quality, look, that can vary. Look, I suppose on the dairy side with spring calving cows in milk, or on the beef side with finishing cattle, we'll be targeting DMD north of 70, so ideally 72, 73. Our young stock, be it dairy stock or grown cattle at weaning stage, you'd want to be getting your silage 70, 72 DMD. And then I suppose, look, in different systems then, we can have some poor quality silage. So I suppose dry dairy cows, or even dry suckler cows, 68, 70 DMD. I suppose on the suckler side, cows, particularly spring calving cows, they can come in at the back end of the year after being weaned, in very good condition, and some farms might get away with even lower quality silage with them for the dry period, so even as low as 66 DMD. So look, depending on your farming system, the amount of each type of silage will vary that you need. So a bit of planning goes into that, and how do we, I suppose, put the silage in the yard of the various different qualities to optimize the, I suppose, winter feeding period.
And how does a farmer, particularly a farmer who has different types of animals on the farm, I'd say a farmer who holds on to his young stock, and maybe out as far as fattening, that's a completely different system to a farmer who is milking 100 cows on a platform.
Yeah, look, I suppose the farmer needs to just sit down and see what the average stock over next
Hmm.
winter will be. Know we're a good bit out. It's just, I suppose, a bit of forward planning. This year as well, a lot of farmers will have a certain amount of silage possibly left over. So see, I suppose, where they're at. You need to tot up your average stock numbers in each of the different brackets, and then tot up the intake. So look, 2% of the animal's live weight will be the intake in kgs of dry matter over the winter. So look, your young stock, your weaning stock, a 300 kilo animal at 6 kg intake. A finishing animal up around 500-600 kilos. Look, it's 10 kg possibly intake of silage, maybe even as low as eight or 9 if there's 4 and 5 kilos of meal going in. And then look, your suckler cow, 10 to 12 kilos intake, a dry suckler cow, and a dry dairy cow would be similar. So look, there's calculations that can be done, they can be found online. Just follow budget calculators, and look, it'll give a guide, and then farmers can assess, I suppose, after first cut where they're at and maybe what balance they need to make up.
And Michael, should a farmer graze silage ground in the spring?
Yeah, so look, I suppose if the herd, be it beef or dairy, can walk to the ground, always graze in the spring. So, as I said there at the start, silage, say grass silage preserved is 2 to 2.5 times the cost of grazed grass.
Hmm.
So if we can get stock out, get grazing, I know this spring it's been on
Difficult.
off in terms of weather, and there's not much or many stock out yet. But look, we might get a turn in the weather, it might improve, and a certain amount of that silage ground will be able to be grazed. Look, the target is a clean green base in March, so if we can achieve that by, look, it's looking likely by late March, we'll be able to get this high quality silage in late May, early June. Grading down tightly if possible. Look, ground conditions will lead to, I suppose, middling grazing if we are grazing some of this ground. And look, I suppose swards with yellow or dead material in the base, they must be grazed off in the spring. So particularly silage ground, we need to assess if there's some yellow or dead material coming there. It'll just subsequently reduce silage yield and quality if that isn't grazed off.
Okay. If I was to ask you then, what is the main thing you would say to any farmer considering or looking at what his requirements are going to be for next winter?
Look, it's just, I suppose, we need to see what quantity we need in terms of tonnage, firstly. So look at our average stock numbers, see what tonnage that is, be it in pit or bales. Then break down that stock into your categories. Look, if it's a dairy farm, there'll be a certain amount of milk and cow silage needed, a certain amount of dry cow silage needed. And then the younger stock, look, it's important to keep them growing at their optimum target. So we want in around that 70 DMD silage, a little better if possible. And that'll just keep them ticking along at your 0.6, 0.7 over the winter with maybe a kilo or a kilo and a half a meal. Look, on the beef side then, if you're a suckler system, a spring calving suckler system, it could be a lot of dry cow silage. If we're carrying weanlings through the winter, then we need, I suppose, half dry cow silage, half good quality silage. And then in dairy calf to beef systems, look, that's nearly the most important system. We need to target as much high quality silage as possible. So if our younger stock over the first winter, we need them on good quality silage. If we're carrying animals through to finish on them systems, we need good quality silage there as well. And that can be balanced then with your 4 or 5 kilos of meal in the finishing period. So look, each farm will have its own, I suppose, tonnage requirement, but we need to have a balance of quality and quality silage and, I suppose, more middling or poor quality silage for your dry cows, be it suckler or dairy cows.
Okay, well, look, thanks for all that advice this morning, Michael. That, listeners, was Michael Campion from Teagasc, and if you need more information, why not make contact with your Teagasc advisor. Listeners, it's that time of the year again when I sit down with the auctioneers, or at least 4 of the auctioneers in County Tipperary every year, to have a chat about land prices, house prices, price for rental land, and anything else in the actual property market that we feel like having a chat about. So with me I have, as in every year since we have started doing this, I have Owen Dillon from Nina, I have Seamus Brown from Ross Gray, I have James Lee from Newport, and John Stokes all the way from Clonmel. I'm going to start off with you, Owen. You know, the REA report for the past year is now out. What's that saying to us?
I suppose basically the land prices in general went down a little bit last year, which is only to be expected with the price of milk, etc. and that. But then in the average price probably was affected by some forestry land that was sold, and there was virtually no demand for forestry land in the last year since the storm last February. So that probably had a dampening effect. But like there are still some agents reporting some incredible prices. 20,000, 30,000 an acre is not unusual anymore for good quality land in good locations.
Can you give me the indicative price, or roughly a price, for the various types of land, we'll say, in Tipperary? How did Tipperary compare with other parts of the country?
Yes, well, Tipperary is probably at the top end of the scale, both in the capital values and the rental values. It wouldn't be uncommon to be double other parts of the country. In Tip, our average last year was just over €15,500 an acre on average, but you have to bear in mind that includes the bad with the good of the mainland. So the bad will pull down the average. The average in 2024 was slightly higher. It was about 17,500. So you're down about 13% year on year in general. And
you say there was little or no demand for, we'd say, land that you could plant?
Both the land that could be planted or land that was in trees already, existing crops.
Was in trees?
Standing crops in particular.
There was no market.
Very hard to sell.
That's very interesting because, the lorries going up and down that road. There's a sawmill not too far away from it, as James would know there. And there's always timber. And it amazes me it's going both ways. I think some of it might be going down there to John's place down there in Clonmel, down to Medite and Clonmel. What do you see then is likely to happen in 2026?
I would expect steady as it goes. I would expect that the demand will still be there for land. Probably unlikely to see much fluctuation in price this year. Certainly on the rental side, it has been very strong early in the year. It's probably too early yet for land sales, but there's no indication that there's going to be any difference in demand. In terms of volume of land sold, we sold nearly half the land in 25 as 24, but the prices were much the same, if you know what I mean.
Are you trying to tell me now, Owen, that you're poorer now than you were at the beginning of 2024?
No, we sold a nice bit of land last year.
Right.
In general, the prices should hold up their own.
The other question I wanted to ask you is, now milk has dropped in price considerably from the last time we sat around this table. There's been a massive drop in milk. Is that likely to affect the price that farmers will pay for land that will come on the market in Tipperary in 2026?
You would expect so, but most of the people buying land are very strong progressive dairy farmers who I think will take a long-term view. They'll look at the milk auctions. The last 5 auctions have been positive. So they're going to say, right, middle of the year, milk prices are going to probably have bottomed out, and they will expect a rise towards the end of the year again in milk prices, and they'll take an average over the 3 years. And a lot of them have a decent war chest built up, ready to buy any land that comes up close to them.
Right, we'll move on. John, would you concur now? And Owen is coming from a place with John is down to James I'm talking to now, folks. I'm getting these guys mixed up. Right. James, Owen comes from a part of the world where there's very, very good land around the Nina area, going back into Seamus Brown's area here on my right-hand side. But what's it like up in Newport?
Well, around Newport, Jim, we do have some quite good quality land as well. I would have seen, I suppose, a lot of our hinterland would cross in across parts of East Clare and West Limerick, right, or East Limerick. So I would have experienced land certainly along the lines of 15 to 17, 18,000 an acre. But it's very much the same as Owen's example for last year. We've noticed a definite drop-off in the number of farms we've had for sale, which, compared to previous years, we had a lot more land on the market. This year, I suppose from the start of the year, I definitely had more calls from good clients looking for land, well-established clients that would have been capable of performing, so to speak. Yeah. And that's both from a purchasing and a rental point of view. A lot of our land would be in the 250 an acre bracket. It wouldn't be the 400 plus an acre bracket rental wise, but certainly a lot of that land is maintained. The big thing is for a lot of my clients, landowners, if the tenant is performing and looking after a place, they'll stay and work with them at a reasonable level, rather than increasing rents too much.
Okay, what's it like down south, John?
Very similar to what James said, but what we're finding is real shortage of rental ground this year. So you're getting a couple of headline rental results, but by and large, a lot of the guys we're dealing with, they're happy to stay on with the tenants they have. Conacre is nearly becoming a thing of the past. A lot of guys now want leases, long leases, because it's a lot more tax efficient than that, and a lot of the progressive farmers are happy to meet a fella midway and try and do a deal if possible, and we're finding leases are definitely the way forward. And right around Clonmel, Feathered and areas like that, there's very little land for rent. There's very little coming up, and stuff that is coming up is actually making a premium because of that severe shortage.
Right, okay. And prices were roughly the same, a little bit back like the other areas?
look, in certain pockets in where I'm from, you've got a couple of very big key buyers who are willing to take each other on and pay premium prices for places. You've still got some very strong dairy farmers who have that war chest built up. You've got strong equine interest there in certain areas, and like prices are holding up well. So had some very strong results last year, but as James said, the volume seems to be down a bit from last year. Like we're getting a lot of inquiries looking for land for lease, but there isn't as much farms yet coming on the market. Now it's early days yet, but like yet stuff that's coming is making good money.
And what about Roscrea and Bor, up into Bor, probably the whole of Laois as well, knowing you, Seamus?
That's it now, and onto the Slievebone Mountain. So no more than that, we have a mix around Roscrea. The land close to Roscrea is quite good, similar to Neenah and that being a land and down to Bor. But then as you head on to the Slievebone Mountains, only a couple of miles out the road from us, the quality dips are right. But then I suppose we're into forestry, and we're into different types of sales and that. And actually, just the forestry was mentioned earlier there, I did get a bit of mature forestry away, 32 acres, so it made just shy of 7,000 an acre. It hadn't been tinned, it was due to be tinned a couple of years ago, and I suppose that saved it. So there was no storm damage, and it was at good growth, and mainly spruce. Yeah, so just shy of 7, and we have at the moment we have a fund there with a client there that's actively looking and purchasing mature forestry and good plantations. If there's any out there, there is a limited market, as Owen said, but yet there is one or two in that market. I suppose on the sales end of it, as the lad said already, the supply is low. That's we had one particular sale there last year, an executor sale, but there was a tenant in situ. And normally with a tenant in situ would slow the thing down, but this land sold at 13,000 an acre. Now it was a tenant that bought it, but yet there was underbidders it was a public auction. We had 2 public auctions in room, which we hadn't done in a long time, but it was a preference of both owners to do an in room, and it was good to get back there and back behind the table and have the people in front of you, and I think people enjoyed it, and so I suppose we still do the online as well, but it's good to have both options. Smaller lots then, we had lots then anything around 20 acres, 2 lots there since the start of this year, one with 15,500 an acre, another 16,500, but there is a shortage there, and and we no more than that, the lads here today, there are inquiries for land that we don't have available, and then I suppose on the rental front with 61 acres there outside town, we let it on a 10-year lease for $450 an acre. We could have got more, could have got 460, 470. There was still 3 in play at that stage, but like with a lot of landowners, there was a preference, and they looked at who was left. I suppose we started with nearly 10, would you believe, and then we whittled down to 3, and the owner just had a preference for this man, dairy man, not too far away, and we done our deal at 450. But no more than that. I have lots of inquiries, and just the rental land, the land to rent is not out there. So I suppose that's kind of where I'm at, yeah.
And would you all agree then that there won't be much of a difference in 2026 as we go into this year, that it's looking very like last year rather than 2024?
Yes, to a certain extent, but I think that the availability of finance could become crucial because, like, we don't know what's happening with this war in Iran, stuff like that. That might affect the availability of finance. That's one thing that none of us can control.
And of course, you have the rising costs of fuel, which is going to rise the cost of everything, no matter what commodity it is, really. Yeah. Listeners, stay with us for the rest of the programme, because we're going to look at the prices of the various different types of property across a Tipperary, whether that's a rented property or whether it is a new build or whatever the case may be. So we're going to continue the discussion until the end of the programme. Listeners, you're welcome back after the break, and my friends from the auctioneering world are still with me. Before I go away from land, the price of land, what is the average price per acre that people are prepared to pay for land that's suitable for forestry? Now, you said there was very little of it on the market, but what would be...
I would have thought, Jim, to be around 6 an acre.
An acre.
I would have thought
Yeah,
land that's
okay.
suitable for that. We actually have a farm at the minute that's just over the road from you here in the Milestone.
Right.
95 acres, which is very suitable, I think, for forestry. It's not designated or anything, but we're guiding 500,000 on it, which seems to be very attractive for a lot of clients that we've had inquiries from so far, and a lot of the forestry companies are looking at it. So
Yeah, but you're dealing there basically with forestry companies, not necessarily a farmer mightn't buy it.
not necessarily, but it's
wouldn't be.
semi on the border of being suitable for farming as well.
And with that 5,000 to 6,000
Yeah,
an
I
acre
concur with
be
that. Yeah. Again, lot of designated land where I am, and with the Hen Harrier preservation
Yeah,
area,
yeah.
and this has closed the book nearly, almost closed the book in our area. And as I said earlier, there the land that has been planted a number of years comes on the market from time to time, and if there's a market for that, it's fine. But lots of land there that could be planted, but because of the designation, it can't. But in saying that, yeah, I concur with James. Probably in the region of 6,000 an acre. That would be with the premium structure on that, and the grant structure would probably where it would fall. Yeah.
right.
Very little forestry land around our area.
Yeah, I know. Land is too good down there now. That's the trouble there now. So it is, John. Your land is too good down around Clonmel. No, but it isn't called Clonmala for nothing, is it? No. Okay, moving on then to, from a national point of view, it's probably the biggest story every year since we started, and that's house prices. So, will you start off there now,
Okay,
John?
our big issue is same as I think all of us, is that shortage of supply. At least from this time last year, we've had a few estates starting, Clonmel, Cahir, towns like that. Some of the small, some of the towns around here. So at least we have new builds starting. But like you look up around 330 to 350 for a basic 3-bed semi. Now they're an A-rated house. They're a lot more efficient to run. But like it's a big figure for a first time buyer, down this neck of the woods. You know what I mean? And I just find that, look, they are started, they are going well. But you're looking at that for 3-bed semi with second hand. There's a few coming up the whole time, but it's like everything, shortage of supply.
And that's not going to change.
That is not going to change, no. And the cost of materials is going up exponentially. So like that 330 will be 350, very soon. And like the one thing that I have noticed, and I think all the guys will agree with me, is that the fella building the one-off house, they're no more. They're very little. There are very few one-off houses being built because the costs of building them, the getting the planning permission, the whole headache involved, they're nearly. Like I was speaking to an engineer yesterday, and he said he specialises in one-off houses, and he said he's never been quieter for one-off houses.
Right, now a lot of people listening to this programme this morning, they're not farmers, and there are people that would be possibly young people looking for houses. What's the market like for, they're looking at television every night in these programmes, buying a cheap house to retrofit or to do fit. Is there many of those down around Clonmel, or are they all good houses?
There are, but the problem is that the grant is nearly being consumed by the price people are paying, because the demand is outstripping supply. So you might have had a house a couple of years ago that was worth 120,000, give or take. That house is making 160, 170,000 because fellas are chasing the grant. So it's they kind of pass each other out.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
You agree with that?
I do agree with John on that. Yeah, I mean, the house that was, John said 100, 120 grand, they're gone up 50, 60,000, 40, whatever. So, I mean, you have straight away, you've spent a good portion, 70 or 80% of your grant before you even get it. Then the cost of doing them up, I mean, it's way exceeded any grant. I mean, whether the grants will be looked at again in terms of the amount that they're going to advance, I don't know. They were very attractive when they came out 2-3 years ago. And I suppose even out of that 70,000 vacant grant, there's probably, if there was no price inflation on a house, the build cost would probably vet in from then till now. Maybe half that, 20, 30, 35,000 of that is gone for the same job, if you like. But look, there's still good demand for those doer ups, but probably not as you know, they're not as bullish. Buyers aren't as bullish as they were, I suppose. And if somebody can get, I think, a good second-hand house, maybe a house built 30, 40 years ago, dated, might need a little bit of work, but yet it's good enough to move in and to live in. And the expectations of buyers now have changed. There was a time, and I can go back 20 years, when people were buying houses and what I would consider a good kitchen and a good fireplace, they were just being thrown out. There's no throwing anything out now. You know, everything has a value now, which I suppose is not a bad thing. But in saying that, people, the expectations have come down. If they can get a house and get their foot in the door and let the flooring need to be changed, the tiling or whatever, people are happy enough to put up with that for a time. But there is value in our area anyway compared to building a house. And look, it's very hard to compare a house with a D rating or an E rating, solid fuel or whatever you have, to a new air to water A-rated house. I mean, you'd heat them very easily. I just know someone had done up one there recently. I had a chat with them, and they were getting their bills over the winter there of less than €300, and that covered their heating and their light bill and the whole lot. Compared to filling the tank of oil and spending €1,000, and it's probably gone to 1,200 now. But anyway, but overall, yet the supply is low. We've had a lift in our area of maybe 30, 40,000 in some of them detached houses in the last 12 months. And we have buyers coming further and further away. We were very much a local market for a long time. Portlaoise, Mountdraff would have been the cut-off point, but we now have a lot of people coming out of Dublin and Kildare buying in Roscrea, which wouldn't have been the case, but they're driving the price a little bit, all right, definitely. We do have hopefully a new estate coming on. It's the first time since 2008 that a new house will be offered for sale on the open market in Roscrea. There has been houses built, but all for social housing. And again, like John would probably hopefully pitching them, could be 360, could be 370. But if you go up to Portlaoise, which is only 20-25 minutes up the road, you're paying 400,000 for your 3-bed semi, and you're paying up to 450,000 for your 4-bed semi-detached. I suppose you have different markets competing. It's all about the jobs and where those jobs are located and the income. It's not even about the income in the area anymore. It's the income of the buyer that's coming into the area and is prepared to commute and that. But the rental is the same, I suppose. The rental market is non-existent, near impossible to get a house to rent. I don't think we rented 10 houses last year.
And John, your situation, satellite town to city of Limerick.
Limerick City, yeah. I mean, we're only 9 miles from...
And passing through Newport, I don't see much activity there now.
Well, we've
except that bit on my side of the...
Yeah,
here.
Small little bit there on the Thurles side.
Yeah.
There's the biggest problem we have, like the lads have said, is supply, but there's no new housing estate being developed in Newport since 2008, 2009. And that is the biggest problem. And I suppose we're 9 miles, as I said, from the city. We're 10 minutes from Castletroy, and that's where all the people are coming from. And they're selling a 3 and 4 bed semi there for 450,000 nearly. And what they can buy out in Newport for the equivalent, they're buying a good detached house of a decent quality, which is the big thing we're seeing. And I suppose houses that would have been 280, 290 12 months ago are now at 330 and 340, and the same for a 4-bedroom, good quality 4-bedroom detached house. That's now at 490, 500 nearly in some cases in some of the estates, which is it's a trend I can see continuing because of the supply. It's not there, and then the rental situation is the same. I mean, you don't have any decent house around our area that you can get for under 2,000 now nearly in some cases. Yeah,
and amazing, you need them in your part of the area because there are good jobs now in Limerick City. You know, the city has improved considerably.
There's huge employment there at the moment around the Technological Park and in Raheen, and you know, between Northern Trust, Eli Lilly, Edwards Life Sciences, Johnson & Johnson, Vistacon. There's a list of them there that are very good employers.
Yeah. Owen, what's it like in Nenagh? I don't see any other big development in Nenagh driving through it. The only development I see now is on the road between Thurles and Nenagh.
I suppose the good news is that the long-awaited upgrade works of the sewage treatment plant started there recently, So from having virtually no capacity in the treatment plant, we can have capacity of about 3,000 houses coming on stream in the next 2 or 3 years. That has kind of resulted in nearly 700 houses being announced to be built in the last couple of weeks. They haven't released any of them yet and haven't released prices for any of them yet. So it'll be interesting to see what price they're pitched at and what the market's reaction is to them. To me, the developers probably won't be able to offer them for much less than 400,000 for a 3-bed semi there, and you'll be putting your money down now and waiting a year and a half, maybe 2 years to get your house, and you won't know who your neighbours are going to be. So it's going to be a balancing act for the person. Do they go second hand and avail of some of the grants to do up the houses and change the windows and doors now and that kind of stuff, or do they wait for the new one?
Right, so we haven't made too much progress since this time last year.
No, but slowly getting there, I suppose. And services again, I mean, we have the capacity in Roscrea, even though we are coming to the limit there now at the moment. There is between what's currently being built and what is being built, we're up to 180 new houses, but they're all social housing though, and they're on 4 or 5 different sites. But I have a small site now of 22, so we'll be hoping to get in and get going there before the summer. So that'll test the market, yeah.
Whereas in Clonmel, at least we have some new private development, and we've also got some new private development industry they have been granted planning. So it's good to see that in Clonmel, especially and Care, that there are some new developments coming on stream, and there's good demand from. But the one thing is quite interesting with the new development vis-a-vis the older development, as the boys touched on it ever so slightly, is that the new developments, you're not getting any space. You're getting a relatively small back garden. You're getting your space for your one car. Whereas at least with some of the older estates, yes, they might be as energy efficient, but you're getting a bigger back garden. You're getting a bigger, it might be, it's definitely not as energy efficient, but you're getting a bigger residence, you're getting a bigger garden, and people are starting to weigh up those areas. So suddenly you're finding older, mature areas. People are, the price have listed in them as well.
You're welcome back, listeners, after that short break, and we now go to the final segment of this morning's show, and the 4 gentlemen are still with me. What's the second-hand market for houses like?
Second-hand market is very strong. I mean, it's jumped considerably, certainly around the Newport area in the past even 12 months, as I said. I mean, we don't have any new development, so it's all been driven by second-hand stuff. I mean, your typical 4-bedroom bungalow would be anything from 420 to 450. That's in a country, rural area, 5-10 minutes outside of town,
There are people who might be a little bit like living in a big house today. They're in their 60s. They are going to downsize a bit. There must be houses on that kind of big house coming on the market.
There's a big market for those type of people, but there's no supply for them. There's no smaller houses for them to buy in around the town. That's the problem. I could think of probably half a dozen clients at the minute who want to do exactly that, but there's nowhere for them to buy that has a footpath outside their door. They can walk into the shop, the church, the doctor,
the whole
basic stuff.
But one would have imagined. So the bottleneck there is not that there aren't people who want to downsize, but the trouble is there's no place for them to go.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I concur with James on that. I would. I have 3 or 4 there, and I can think of one lady I spoke to only during the week, and living in, on their own in out in the countryside, I suppose, thinking of coming into town, but then there's very little there to buy. And I suppose if any builder was going to start in an area, the smaller house, the 1-bed, 2-bedroom house for a retired person with the public street lighting and the footpath and being able to access everything on foot is definitely in big demand. And you have a lot, I suppose it goes for every town really. You have a lot of people living in houses that don't suit their needs in the sense that it's a 3-4 bedroom house and they're there on their own, and they don't have any option to downsize, or there's very little available for them.
Whereas in Clonmel, we've actually had 2 developments recently for 2-bedroom semi-detached bungalows, and they sold very well.
Yeah, isn't that something to look at into the future then, to have to get these houses to come on stream so that somebody can downsize, and the people who are coming into the house that the people are leaving would have maybe a little bit of money to spend to bring it up to spec.
Yeah, especially with centrally located sites, as the boy says, sites within the curtilage of the town, within easy walk places. Like there's been 2 developments in Clonmel recently where they were 2-bedroom semi-detached bungalows, and they sold very well.
Right. Okay. The last side bit we'll go to would be: is there many industrial sites for industrial expansion in the various towns around?
We sold about 25 acres in Lisbonny Industrial Estate for Shan Development. Thankfully, Tipperary County Council bought it a number of years ago. They have resold on most of that now. Apex Aviation have applied for planning permission to essentially build a new purpose-built industrial unit on it for storing aircraft engines. It's in the planning process at the moment. I think it was a really well thought out plan by Tipperary County Council to purchase it, develop it and sell it on. They also provide additional land for the lunch bag, which is a business that we sold the building to in Lisbonny Industrial Estate, and that has allowed the lunch bag to grow significantly as well. Unfortunately, there isn't much other land now. Once Apex is built, there's no other serviced industrial land in town to build, so hopefully it will be next on the list and the next development plan to acquire some more sites and service sites. And they're coming down very hard in terms of industrial units being built out in the countryside, or where maybe a farmer's son or daughter or whatever built a unit on the farm or whatever. The legislation is tightening a lot on those guys, and they're being shoved into the industrial estates. And sometimes industrial estates just aren't there for them to locate.
To move into.
And like a lot of the big investment funds are pushing all their money away from retail investment towards logistics. So it's distribution hubs and that kind of stuff close to the motorways that they're kind of concentrating their money on. Certainly the industrial is probably the way it's a scale.
There's none of you too far away from motorways, so
No.
what's it like in
Roscrea?
In
In Roscrea we have 2 business parks. One that was established back about 20 years ago, and sites have changed hands there a couple of times. Only about a third developed, believe it or not, but there's a lot of people sitting on sites there,
Right.
I suppose, haven't put them up on the market. They have increased in value, I think, from when they bought them. A lot would have been sold on maybe back 10, 12 years ago, possibly when site owners came under pressure, would have paid substantially more from back in the 90s. But we had 1 or 2 there coming in around 80,000 an acre. And the other park then, similar to Nina, is a park that was, again, a Shannon Development Park, and it was purchased by, when they pulled out then, the local authority bought it, and the local authority have been proactive and successful in sales. Quitman O'Neill have put up a fine building there. I think they could have maybe 6 or 8 acres. It's about 20-acre park. Then there's another local man has another couple of acres bought. There's a building going up and that. So there's good interest there. And I believe they were operating similar to the ones I had sold, around 80,000. I only heard recently, I might stand corrected on this, that they're now gone to 160 an acre. They've had to upgrade services and do a bit of work there, but I might get a slap from the wrist from Tipperary County Council, but that's the talk. But I do believe the price has gone up. So look, the demand is there definitely. Like Owen, and we're onto the motorway as well. We're only a mile out the road. The M7 is a great connectivity to have, either to Dublin or to Limerick. So there is reasonable demand for industrial sites and retail warehousing sites, definitely. Yeah.
What about you now, John? The last big development that I can see in the industrial side would have been Gortnagui.
Argia, top of the hill. That was a very successful development. It's finished out now. Basically, there is a bit more zoned land near coming up to be developed. But like what the boy said, demand is outstripping supply still. But like in Clonmel, we're very lucky. We've got some very good employers.
Farmers, yeah.
Farmers huge in Clonmel, along with Merck Sharp and Down out the road, Medite, Bulmers, and like they're big end users.
There isn't much scope at the moment for expansion.
Look,
In-
they have zoned more lands and stuff in planning
Yeah.
at the moment, but like we're finding that there isn't enough to meet the demand at the moment. There isn't enough there to meet it.
Right. I suppose there's plenty of land in Newport
I wish there
and
was.
the area.
We've
And
actually,
into County Clare now. Will you go into County
well,
Clare?
we would, yeah, but we've, I suppose, Castleconnell near,
Yeah.
just outside
Castle
Limerick,
Connell.
would be an area that we would have dealt with, and we would have sold development sites there. We actually sold a site last year, a 3.5 acre site, for a specific purpose off market to a local manufacturing company. Well, they haven't broken ground yet, but we've since put up 16 acres adjoining that. And of that, 9 acres of it would be zoned in enterprise and employment. We've had good interest in it, but nothing solid yet. But and it's very close to the motorway to get onto the M7 there, at the Mackey roundabout. So it's would be a prime location. But Newport itself has no industrial park at the minute. There is only 5 or 6 acres zoned for enterprise and employment. But our problem, not our problem, but our benefit for us is that we're so close to the city. We're getting the spin off of it regardless.
Right here. Anybody like to add anything else to this discussion before we wind up?
I suppose, Jim, some of your listeners are certainly, we're getting lots of calls from a lot of landlords who have properties wondering about the new changes to the legislation and should they keep their investment property or not. And sometimes that's a farmer with a house on the farm that was maybe the parents' house and they rented it out, or sometimes it's rented to an employee or whatever. Or sometimes the farmer's son or daughter had their own 3-bed semi in town and then moved back to the farmhouse and kept the semi-detached in town and rented it out. So they've become landlords, and I suppose a lot of them are a little bit scared or frightened by the changes to the legislation. They feel that their right to sell the house has been diminished, or that if they ever needed to raise the capital to invest it in the farm, or if somebody got sick or whatever, that they may not be able to sell the house in town. And that seems to be worrying a lot of them. To me, probably what I say to most guys is like, don't worry, there actually isn't that many huge changes, and if we know in time, we can plan towards it and try and go around the work with the tenants to solve the problem rather than it being a big problem down the line. So I suppose if I was a landlord, I wouldn't panic and I wouldn't sell it. I would say talk to your local REA agent who'll be happy to manage it for you and manage the process for you in compliance with the legislation. For the tenants, though, unfortunately, I think the government might have scored a bit of an own goal. They might have thought that the changes to legislation were going to improve the supply of apartments and that. And yes, it might do with the big funds in the big cities, but not in Thurles, not in Roscrea, not in Clonmel, not in Neenah, not in Newport, or any of the smaller villages in the county. Those villages are most of the landlords there only own one house. They're not landlords who have 10, 20, 30 houses, if you know what I mean. And those people bought those houses maybe 20, 25 years ago and are now probably coming to an age where they don't like long-term commitments and like to keep things as fluid as possible. But that's just my observation.
I gather the same goes
Same,
for everybody,
yes,
because I'm out of time.
Yeah.
I want to thank you, the four of you, ever so much. John, Seamus, Owen and James, for joining me again this year, and let's hope we'll all be sitting here again this time next year, and things will be looking up rather than looking down. I hope you sell more this year than you saw last year.
Please God.
And thanks very much.
Thanks,
Jim. Thank you.
That, listeners, is Agri Report for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show and that you'll join me at the same time next week. Coming up next is the news at 10 o'clock, and after that, Eamon Dwyer presents Down Your Way.